All right, welcome back and thanks for tuning in. We're going to go ahead and just get right to it. Right now I'm scraping out this silicone caulking that the manufacturer decided to use. They like to use it because it's waterproof, but if you plan on painting your trailer, it is not something you want in there. It's not paintable. It's waterproof and the paint will just wick away, and so would the epoxy floor. It wouldn't stick to it is what would happen. So anyways, I had to get it out of there completely. It took me a little bit of time, but with the heat gun and my little scraper knife and a couple other tools, I was able to make it happen. Anyways, had to vacuum it up, get the trailer all clean, and then get ready for the next step. Most importantly, I didn't want any contamination on the floor. So I really went, the extra mile and busted out the sander and sanded everything down, which I probably didn't have to. But I just wanted to make sure that everything was going to look as good as possible. And then after I sanded everything, the next step is to deal with all the cracks in between each sheet of plywood. Now, there's a couple different ways you can go about it, but I decided that I was going to tape the seams with a drywall mesh and then coat it with a red guard. And that's the tape you see right there, just some drywall joint tape, and then I used the red guard over top of it. Crack proof membrane. So that was my protection to keep the floor one piece waterproof and to keep it from cracking. But anyways, after I got that tape down, I started coating it with my red guard, and then I can go ahead and get into doing this epoxy. Anyways, stay tuned. Hopefully you enjoy. Alright, it's epoxy time. Time to get this stuff mixed up and poured out on the ground. I did a lot of prep work up until this point to really make sure that, my substrate, the floor of my trailer was ready for this epoxy and that it was going to last as long as possible. The epoxy company has a lot of stuff that they'll recommend to use underneath of this epoxy floor kit, but I decided to kind of use my own knowledge and use this stuff that I knew was available to me and a little bit cheaper to make this happen. But anyways, the epoxy companies have, vapor barriers and different undercoaters and primers that you can use. But I was able to use that red guard and the caulking that I used to kind of, make up my own system. But anyways, the top coat is what's important, and that's this epoxy two-step process. Basically, you put down this gray epoxy, then you broadcast the flakes into the epoxy, you let it harden, you come back the next day, you scrape, and then after you scrape, you sweep and vacuum, get it all up, and then you put another clear epoxy over top. You can use a few different products. I used an epoxy over top. There's also, stuff that's a little bit tougher, like some polyaspartic or maybe some polyurea. Both those things are, real tough, and they'll stand up against, the exterior environments. But seeing as this is an interior trailer and, I'm not going to be too hard on it, the epoxy is going to work just fine. But anyways, stay tuned as I finish this thing up. It really comes together at the end.